In the history of the Soviet Union, the KGB played a crucial role in maintaining the power of the Communist Party through intelligence gathering, surveillance, and political repression. One of the most notorious operations associated with the KGB was the Lubyanka operation, named after the infamous Lubyanka building in Moscow, which housed the headquarters of the KGB. The operation was a complex web of intelligence work, espionage, and manipulation aimed at both domestic control and international influence. The operation began in the 1950s, during the reign of Joseph Stalin, and continued throughout the Cold War era. The Lubyanka building became the symbol of terror and oppression in the Soviet Union. For decades, it was the site of torture, imprisonment, and execution of perceived enemies of the state. It was here that political dissidents, spies, and anyone suspected of disloyalty to the regime were detained and interrogated. The KGB's role in political control. The primary objective of Operation Lubyanka was to root out any threats to the Soviet regime, both from within the country and abroad. The KGB utilized a variety of methods, including surveillance, infiltration, and the manipulation of public opinion. Political enemies were often accused of espionage, treason, or anti-revolutionary activities, and the Lubyanka building became a place of fear for anyone even remotely associated with opposition to the Communist Party. Among the most famous individuals arrested and tortured during the operation was the Soviet writer and dissident Aleksandr Solzhenitsyn. His writings on the Gulag system exposed the horrors of the Soviet state, and his arrest was one of the most well-known cases of KGB persecution. His treatment at the Lubyanka was emblematic of the broader atmosphere of fear and repression that defined Soviet rule. The espionage and counterintelligence aspect. The Lubyanka operation was also heavily involved in espionage, both in terms of gathering intelligence on foreign governments and countering foreign spies operating within the Soviet Union. The KGB had an extensive network of informants and agents working in various countries, and its operations extended far beyond Soviet borders. One of the most famous cases of KGB espionage during this period was the recruitment of foreign agents. The KGB used a variety of techniques to infiltrate Western governments and military structures, including manipulation, blackmail, and recruitment of disillusioned individuals. The most famous spy to emerge from this operation was Kim Philby, a British intelligence officer who passed secrets to the Soviet Union for years under the guise of working for the British government. The Lubyanka as a symbol. The Lubyanka building itself became a symbol of the KGB's power and control. Over the years, it became synonymous with fear and repression. The building housed not only the KGB's main offices, but also its detention cells and interrogation rooms. It was here that many people disappeared without a trace, only to be found years later in mass graves or labor camps. The Lubyanka was also a center of surveillance. The KGB maintained an extensive system of informants who reported on the activities of ordinary Soviet citizens. This created a climate of distrust and fear, as people were always wary of being watched or denounced by their peers. Intrigues, conspiracies, and betrayals. The KGB's operation at Lubyanka was not without its internal intrigues and conspiracies. In the world of espionage, betrayals and shifting alliances were common, and the Lubyanka was no exception. Power struggles within the KGB itself, as well as rivalries with other Soviet agencies, led to the downfall of many high-ranking officials. One of the most dramatic examples of betrayal within the KGB was the story of Oleg Penkovsky, a Soviet military intelligence officer who became one of the most important spies for the West during the Cold War. Penkovsky's information helped the United States and its allies to understand Soviet missile capabilities and was crucial during the Cuban Missile Crisis. However, his eventual betrayal by the KGB led to his arrest and execution, showcasing the ruthless nature of the KGB's internal control mechanisms. The legacy of Lubyanka and the KGB. The legacy of Operation Lubyanka and the KGB's role in Soviet political life is still felt today. After the collapse of the Soviet Union in 1991, many of the KGB's functions were transferred to the new Russian Federal Security Service, FSB. However, the shadow of the Lubyanka operation continues to loom large, both in terms of the stories of those who suffered under its repression and the lingering fears of surveillance and control that remain in Russia. The Lubyanka building itself remains a symbol of the Soviet era, and while it is no longer the site of political repression, it continues to serve as a reminder of the dark chapters in the history of the Soviet Union. In conclusion, Operation Lubyanka represents the terrifying extent of the Soviet regime's control over its citizens and its operations abroad. The KGB's power was immense, and its influence reached every corner of Soviet life. The conspiracies, espionage, and intrigues that occurred within the Lubyanka building left an indelible mark on Soviet history and continue to serve as a reminder of the dangers of absolute power.